Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When was the last time you checked your phone hoping to see her name? When was the last time you rewrote a text 3 times before sending it? When was the last time your entire mood shifted based on whether she replied or not? If you're being honest with yourself, it probably happened recently. Maybe even today. Here's the truth that's going to sting. If you're constantly chasing a woman, the problem isn't her. The problem is that your life is too empty for her absence to not matter. I know that's harsh. But we're not here for comfortable lies. We're here for the truth that actually changes things. Today, we're going to talk about why men chase, what it really communicates to women, and why the solution has nothing to do with playing games and everything to do with building a life worth living. If you've ever felt like you're working harder than she is in the relationship, hit that like button. Subscribe, because we're diving deep into the psychology that most people are too afraid to talk about honestly. Let's begin. Here's something most men won't admit. They don't chase women because they're in love. They chase because they're bored. When your days are empty, a text from her becomes the most interesting thing that happens. When your schedule has no real structure, waiting for her reply becomes your main activity. When your life lacks purpose, she becomes the purpose. That's not romance. That's dependency. Think about it. When you're deeply focused on something important, a project deadline, an intense workout, building something meaningful, do you obsessively check your phone? Do you spiral because she took 3 hours to reply? No, because you're occupied. Your mind is engaged. Your energy is directed at something that matters. But when your life is mostly scrolling, watching shows, and waiting for something interesting to happen, suddenly her attention becomes everything. It becomes your entertainment, your validation, your proof that you matter. And women can feel that. They might not consciously think this guy has nothing going on, but they sense it. They feel the weight of being your entire source of happiness, and it's exhausting for them. My friend Ryan learned this the hard way. He's a good guy, smart, kind, treats women well. But he had a habit of making whoever he was dating the center of his universe. He'd rearrange his entire schedule for her, cancel plans with friends if she was free, spend hours crafting the perfect text. His whole day would revolve around when they'd see each other next. At first, the women he dated liked it. It felt flattering, special. But after a few weeks, they'd always start pulling away, getting busy, responding less, eventually ghosting. Ryan couldn't understand it. He was doing everything right, being attentive, caring, available. But that was exactly the problem. He was too available. Because availability without purpose looks like desperation. And desperation kills attraction faster than almost anything else. The brutal truth is this: a man who's constantly available is a man who has nothing important happening in his life. And women don't respect men who have nothing important happening. Not because women are shallow, but because purpose and drive are fundamentally attractive. They signal that you're capable of building something, achieving something, becoming something. When you chase, you're signaling the opposite. You're saying, I have so much free time and energy that I can dedicate hours to wondering why you haven't texted back. Most men think chasing shows interest, shows effort, shows that you care. And on the surface, that makes sense. Of course you should show interest in someone you like, but here's what men don't realize. There's a massive difference between showing interest and showing need. Interest says, I enjoy spending time with you. Need says, I require your presence to feel okay. Interest says, I think you're great. Need says, I think I'm not great without you. Women are incredibly perceptive about this difference. They can tell when you're pursuing them from a place of confidence versus when you're pursuing them from a place of fear. And fear-based pursuit, which is what chasing really is, triggers something in women that actually pushes them away. Think of it like this. Imagine someone constantly asks to borrow money from you. Every time you see them, they need something. Maybe they're polite about it. Maybe they even pay you back sometimes. But the relationship becomes defined by their need. Eventually, even if you like them as a person, you start avoiding them. Because interacting with them feels like a transaction where you're always the one giving. That's how women experience men who chase. Every interaction feels like you need something from them. Reassurance, validation, confirmation that they still like you, proof that you matter. And just like with the person constantly asking for money, women start avoiding that energy. Not because they're cruel, but because it's draining. Let me give you a specific example. I know a guy named Marcus who was dating a woman named Jasmine. Things started well. But Marcus had this habit of constantly seeking reassurance. Are we okay? You seem distant. Is everything all right? Did I do something wrong? Just want to make sure you're still happy. Every few days, another version of the same question. And every time Jasmine would reassure him, yes, we're fine. Yes, I'm happy. No, you didn't do anything wrong. But here's what Marcus didn't realize. Every time he asked those questions, he was creating the very problem he feared. His constant need for reassurance made Jasmine question whether he was actually confident enough to be in a relationship. Eventually she ended things, not because something was actually wrong, but because his chasing created a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the cruel irony of chasing. The more you do it, the more you push away what you're trying to hold on to. Here's a test. Pull out your phone right now and look at your calendar for the next week. How much of it is filled with things that have nothing to do with her? How many commitments, projects, goals, activities, routines that would happen, whether she existed or not? If the answer is not much, that's your problem right there. Men who chase usually have what I call empty calendar syndrome. Their days have huge blocks of unstructured time that gets filled with thinking about her, checking for messages, planning how to see her next. But men who don't chase, their calendars are packed, not with fake busyness or manufactured unavailability, but with real commitments to things that actually matter to them. They have work projects they're invested in, training schedules they follow, side businesses they're building, skills they're developing, friends they regularly see, hobbies they genuinely care about. When you have a genuinely full life, you don't have the mental space to obsess over why she took 4 hours to reply. You were busy doing something else. You genuinely forgot to check your phone. And women can tell the difference. They can tell when a guy who takes a while to respond is actually busy versus when he's just pretending to be busy while sitting at home refreshing Instagram. My cousin Alex is a perfect example of this. He works in tech, hits the gym 5 days a week, plays in a recreational basketball league and spends weekends working on an app he's developing. When he's dating someone, he's present when he's with them, attentive, engaged. But he's not available 24/7, not because he's playing games, but because he genuinely has other things going on. And you know what women always say about him. He's different. He has his own thing going on. That own thing is magnetic. It's attractive not because it makes him scarce, but because it makes him interesting. He has stories to tell, progress to share, a life that exists independent of who he's dating. Compare that to the guy whose entire world revolves around his girlfriend. He has no interesting updates because nothing interesting is happening in his life outside of her. Every conversation eventually circles back to the relationship because that's all he's really invested in. One of these men is attractive, the other is exhausting. Let's talk about what actually happens in your brain when you chase. You send a text, you wait for a reply, minutes pass, hours pass, you start feeling anxious, you check your phone constantly, you wonder if you said something wrong, you start crafting follow-up messages in your head. That anxiety, it's not about her, It's about you. Specifically, it's about the fact that you've made her response responsible for your emotional state. You've given her the power to make you feel good or bad based on her level of attention. This creates a vicious cycle. The more anxious you feel, the more you chase. The more you chase, the more she pulls away. The more she pulls away, the more anxious you feel. And around it goes until the relationship is dead and you're left wondering what happened. I've watched this cycle destroy so many potentially good relationships, and it always starts the same way. A man who doesn't have enough going on in his life encounters a woman he likes, and suddenly she becomes his primary source of dopamine. When she responds, he gets a hit. When she doesn't, he crashes. His entire neurochemistry starts depending on her attention. That's not love. That's addiction. And just like with any addiction, the solution isn't to get better at chasing your fix. The solution is to build a life where you don't need the fix in the first place. Think about people who are genuinely fulfilled in their lives. They enjoy social interaction, sure, but they don't need it to feel okay. They're not checking their phone every 5 minutes. They're not spiraling over slow replies. Because their emotional stability comes from internal sources, from progress they're making, from discipline they're maintaining, from purpose they're pursuing. That internal stability is what makes you attractive, not the games you play, not the texts you strategically delay, but the genuine groundedness that comes from having a life you actually care about. Here's what most men get wrong. They think women want constant attention, constant communication, constant reassurance that you're thinking about them. Some women might say they want that. They might even believe they want that. But what women are actually attracted to is competence, direction, purpose. A man who's going somewhere. Think about the stories women tell about the men they're attracted to. They don't say, "He texts me every hour." They say things like, "He's so passionate about his work," or "He's training for a marathon," or "He's building something really cool." The attraction isn't to the specific activity. It's to the fact that he has something he's committed to, something that matters to him independent of the relationship, because that commitment signals something important. This man doesn't need me to give his life meaning. He already has meaning. I get to be part of it, not become it. That's the key distinction. Women want to be part of your life, not the entirety of your life. When you make a woman your whole world, you're not giving her a compliment. You're giving her a burden. You're making her responsible for your happiness, your purpose, your identity. And no healthy person wants that responsibility. I learnt this from watching my friend David. He's a musician who takes his craft seriously, practices daily, plays regular gigs, constantly working on new material. When he's dating someone, the relationship is great, but it never consumes him. If a woman tries to demand all his time or gets upset that music takes priority, sometimes he doesn't chase her or try to convince her. He just accepts that they're not compatible. And you know what? Women respect that. Even the ones who initially wanted more of his time end up respecting his boundaries because they signal that he values himself. Compare that to the guy who drops everything the moment a woman shows interest, who cancels his plans, abandons his goals, makes her his new hobby. That guy thinks he's being romantic. But what he's actually being is replaceable. Because a man with no boundaries, no purpose, no life of his own, has no value. Not because value should be transactional, but because value comes from what you create, what you pursue, what you stand for. You can't stand for something if you're constantly chasing someone. So here's the practical part. How do you actually stop chasing? The answer isn't to play hard to get. The answer isn't to ignore women or pretend you don't care. The answer is to genuinely build a life that's interesting, enough that chasing becomes impossible, not because you're too busy to text, but because you're too fulfilled to obsess. Start with your mornings, Do you have a morning routine that centers you? Or do you roll over and immediately check your phone to see if she texted? That single habit, checking your phone first thing, sets the tone for a day of chasing. Because you're starting your day by making your emotional state dependent on someone else's attention. Instead, try this. Don't touch your phone for the first hour you're awake. Do something for yourself. Exercise. Read. Work on a project. Meditate. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something that builds you. Next, look at your week. What are you building? What are you working toward? What goal are you actively pursuing that has nothing to do with dating? If you don't have a good answer to that question, that's your homework. Find something. Could be fitness related, could be career related, could be a creative project, could be learning a new skill. The specific thing doesn't matter as much as having something that demands your attention and rewards your effort. Because here's what happens when you have real goals. Progress becomes your dopamine source instead of her texts. You get excited about hitting a new PR at the gym, finishing a chapter of the book you're writing, closing a deal at work. When those things give you fulfillment, her attention becomes a nice bonus instead of a necessity. And finally, protect your time. Learn to say no. Learn to have plans that don't revolve around her availability. Learn to be okay with not seeing her every day even if you could, not as a manipulation tactic, but as a genuine expression of the fact that you have a life that matters to you. My friend Jordan started doing this after his last relationship fell apart. He committed to going to the gym 5 days a week. No exceptions. He started a side business. He scheduled regular time with his friends. When he started dating again, women noticed something different about him. He was still warm, still interested, still a good guy, but he wasn't needy. He wasn't constantly available. He had structure, and that structure made him more attractive than any smooth line ever could. Let me leave you with this. The reason you chase isn't because she's special. It's because your life isn't full enough for her absence to not create a void. That's not an insult. That's an opportunity. Because if you can fill that void with purpose, with goals, with discipline, with genuine interests and commitments, something amazing happens. You stop chasing. Not as a strategy, but as a natural result of having better things to do. And ironically, that's when women start chasing you. Not because you're playing games, but because you've become the kind of man who's going somewhere. And women want to go somewhere too. They don't want to be the destination. They want to come along for the journey, so stop making women your journey. Build a journey worth taking, and let the right woman join you for the ride. If this hit home, smash that like button. Share this with a friend who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because we're going to keep breaking down the uncomfortable truths that actually change lives. Your life shouldn't revolve around chasing someone. It should revolve around becoming someone. Now go build that life. I'll see you in the next one.